What is up, Kingdom Cloud Chasers? Welcome back to yet another episode of the Kingdom Cloud Podcast. I am your host with the most, Lungam Kize, and today I am bringing you episode 5, the long-awaited, the well-anointed, in God's time appointed episode 5 of the Kingdom Cloud Podcast. I swear I just made that up on the spot, That sounds rehearsed, maybe to you guys, but I promise y'all, I just made that up. Anyways, sorry guys that I kind of disappeared for a couple of weeks. There was something I was dealing with, so I couldn't be here. And I just wasn't getting much ideas for things I could speak about here. So I didn't really have anything to give y'all. So yeah, but I'm back now. And I trust Uti. That won't be, I promise y'all, that won't be something that reoccurs, that currently keeps happening, where I just disappear for no reason, So yeah. So another thing about episode 5, this is going to be the first episode that I'm going to get onto YouTube as well, because I know that now that a lot of people struggle to, okay, not a lot, but some people struggle to get access to the platforms where Kingdom Cloud is currently available, being Spotify and Apple Podcast or iPodcast, I don't remember. But yeah, that one. So I made a plan and I got it onto YouTube. This is going to be the first episode. This is the first episode that's going to be available on YouTube. So, yay! So yeah, that's what's going on. I'm sorry if my voice sounds a bit off today. I am actually kind of sick. I don't know what it is. I don't think it's COVID. But either ways, I'm here. It's irrelevant because you guys can't catch whatever I have over the phone or over your laptop or whatever you're using to listen to me right now. So we're good. We're clear. We are within protocol and regulation. So today's topic is going to be responsibility. Responsibility. Noun. 1. The state or fact of having a duty to deal with something or having control over someone. 2. The state or fact of being accountable or to blame for something. Similar. Blame, fault, guilt, liability. So, responsibility. When I think of the word, I think of definition number 2 more often than I do definition number 1. Definition number 2 was more kind of pessimistic, and it sees responsibility as something to be endured and a burden and umthwalo, sort of, right? So instead, I propose that we be responsible, meaning that we take advantage of our ability to respond to the events that take place in our lives. All that we do is a response to an event, which is our very lives. And our very lives themselves are an event. And if you think about how when one of us, if you think about when we are brought into this world, none of us are here by our own will, in a way. No one decided to be here. No one chose to exist. No one chose to exist where they exist. No one chose to exist within the family they're in, and no one chose the color of their skin. No one chose this. But yet, all of us, every single one of us, regardless of how different or whatever our lives are, have the same ability to respond. to said life. We are all still capable of having a response to that life. Because whatever we do with the life is the response itself. So I'm reminded of this quote. I don't even remember who said it, but it's a quote that I try to remind myself of a lot, because if I start feeling like I'm being a victim, I remember this quote. And it says that a good cardsman is not determined by his ability to win with a good hand of cards, but is determined by his ability to win even when dealt the worst hand or set of cards. So, the people in life who we admire and we look up to, even in the Bible, it's not the people who had the best circumstances, and it's not the people who had the best opportunities. It's the people who made the most, who took responsibility and made the best with what they were capable of doing. Whatever was within their control, they took that and used that to their advantage. Those are the people we look up to. Plain example, the story of David, a little boy who was just sent to go deliver a lunchbox for his brothers who are in war, sees this giant mocking and talking all types of wickedness about his God. And he's like, I'm not gonna stand for this. Um and he decides to take a stand, and he takes the weapon with which he knows how to work with. He takes what he has, and he goes and he deals with the issue. He gets the giant's head, literally. And you think of what God said to Gideon, and he says to Gideon, I don't know what it says in English, but in the Zulu translation it says, hamba ngalamandla engikunika wona. So basically, go with the strength that I have given you. It is meaning that what you have and what is within your domain is enough to fulfill the calling that you were put on this planet for, right? And this is another topic. This is a topic that really brings so much liberation if you grasp it accordingly. If you truly try to take in and understand how much power comes with your ability to respond to situations, you start to realize that even things like happiness, or should I say joy, are choice, and love is choice, because the Bible could not be able to tell us to love everyone, but then love be a thing that we don't choose. Because how can you tell me to do something if I'm not in control of that thing? Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like, yeah, I don't have any control over feelings, so you can't tell me to feel away, because feelings come and go based on my environment and the things that are happening to me. Feelings are reactive, but love is something that is capable of remaining even when you don't like a person. You can still love them, and love is a verb. It's something you do. It's the sacrifices you make for someone. And I think that if you look at the relationship between a parent and a child, you start to really realize what love should be, because a child does nothing for their parent, almost, but exist and be adorable, right? And they shouldn't be obligated to do something for them, unless you're black, in which case you probably are expected to to do things. But that takes away the love in your actions. If someone has to do something for you, I don't think it's fair to call it love. Love is a want. Love is something you choose. Love is something you willingly do, which is why I do not like the saying when people say, I fall into love, because part of love, the more important part of it, is the decision you make, the choice. Falling sounds so unconscious and accidental, but choosing is a whole different thing. And for people who do not take action, this is the word. This is a word for you. Like, if you're someone who just sits back and hopes for the best and let life play itself out, and you choose the role of the victim, there's only one thing that is guaranteed for such a person, is that the only guarantee for someone who doesn't act is that you will be acted upon. And then when that happens, you can't sit around and then now complain and say, why do these things happen, when you had the opportunity and the chance to make the action, right? You had the chance to respond, to be the response. So now it's a bit late. It's a bit too late, because life will do what it does until you get in the way of it. Life will be life will be hard. Life will be a battle. Life will be a struggle until you try and do something about it. Like what was said in the very first episode of, not the first episode, but the trailer of the Kingdom Cloud podcast, where I was speaking with my mother and we were talking about running your race, and how, as children of God, for the mere response of not um, running our race and not serving and not going out and telling people about the gospel, and not living in accordance to the word, that by doing so and not running our race, the other team automatically wins. So, likewise, with life and with pain, if you do not go out and look for positivity, and you do not go out and look for and try look for goodness, you won't find it, right? And that's the power that comes with responsibility, and the fact that, to many Christians, so many of us are stuck in a victim like mentality, and we're somewhat very much alike with the Israelites when they had just escaped captivity or slavery from Egypt, and they come to a point where they feel they are about to die, right? They're about to, they think that, like it's over now, it's Charlie. And they say to Moses, did we not have graves way back in Egypt to die and be buried there, that you have taken us out here to die here instead? So basically, they're saying, we could have just died there. We could have just suffered until we died there and lived meaningless lives, and that would have been better. What a victimless thing to say. And yet, so many of us live lives that reflect the same thing. We do the same thing. We don't take actions. We don't do things. We don't pursue dreams. We don't try. And yet, then when life does what it does, we complain. And we forget that everything we have is a response, and everything we can do is a response to the events in our lives. And as Christians, one of the biggest event in our lives is when the God of the universe wrapped himself in flesh and came down and and descended to us to die for our sins. But if we do not accept him and believe this to be the truth, it is all in vain. And all the things that he has left for us, all the opportunities God has placed for us here on this planet, will will just die with us. And i and i even think of like how I think of this I think of a character in the Bible specifically every time I get into the topic of the of responsibility and so on. I think of Joseph. Joseph is a 17-year-old boy, and he's his father's favorite, and he's the least favorite amongst his siblings. Ask me how I know this. Because they literally throw him in a pit just because he got too much drip, and they were hating on him. It's their splat. They were asking him, Joseph, what you got on? And Joseph was like, it's their splat. Don't worry about it, sweetheart. And then they threw him into a pit. And then after throwing him into the pit, they were like, nah, man, wait. We could make some money off this guy. How about we sell him instead? How about we sell him into slavery, and then we split the money? And so that's what they do. They sell him into slavery, and Joseph in ends up a slave in Potiphar's house. And while he is serving in Potiphar's house, in a situation where he doesn't belong, or in a situation or an event where it's not his fault that he's there, and it's not his fault that his life is going in such a spiral, and the people who put him there are out continuing and living their lives and enjoying the money they made off of selling him, instead of whining and complaining and crying all night about that. He probably was, because emotions and crying and feeling depressed and stuff is not something that is within our control. That's not responsible. That is working through that is responsibility. But feeling those things is not something you are in control of. But anyways, I'm not there. I'm not there. So instead of throwing a pity party, Joseph makes the decision that even in this situation, he will continue to do best he can with the cards he has been dealt. And Joseph serves. He works so hard in Potiphar's house, in the house of his master, and he ends up becoming somewhat the manager of the whole operation, and he like kind of calls the shots, right? He's like second in charge to Potiphar himself. And while he's serving and he has worked his way up, I guess he's basically now again in another position of comfort now. And it seems like maybe now God's back. God has got my back again, because we go through things sometimes and we just feel like God has abandoned us and left us, which is okay. It is okay to question even God and ask the questions, because there is no confidence or certainty that will come from being uncertain. So when he feels like his life is getting back on track and he has some sort of purpose again, Potiphar's wife like seduces him, but my boy doesn't fold. That's the thing about Joseph. Joseph is here for his calling, and he knows that he has his morals set, right? And Joseph doesn't fold. So Miss Ma'am here, Potiphar's wife, gets upset, and she basically claims that Joseph tried to rape her, and for which Joseph is sent to jail for for doing nothing, for absolutely nothing. Joseph ends up in jail. And now, even here, he is given the opportunity by the whole universe to just roll himself up in his blankets. I don't even know if they had blankets in prison then or whatever, or and just give up on life and just be the victim, which he was. He had every right to be the victim. His life has been nothing but trial an era since like it's been nothing. Like I don't know when the last good thing that really happened to him was that jacket, and even that was something that led him into more struggle. But then um even now in that prison cell, Joseph makes the decision that I'm not giving up on life, and I'm not just going to sit around and do nothing. There has to be something that I still can do that feels like a calling, that feels like I am in alignment with purpose. And he finds that to be interpreting dreams. And through serving this purpose of his, he ends up in an even bigger position. And he ends up interpreting the dream of Pharaoh, who then sets him free and makes him somewhat the minister of agriculture for Egypt at the time, because Egypt was about to go into a famine, but they were going to have a couple of years. I don't remember how many years, but they were going to have a couple of years of good produce, and like and they want to have abundance basically, and a lot to eat and whatever. But they would have to save up accordingly and eat very accordingly, so that when the famine came and everything died out and there was no food, that they would be able to survive. And this is the dream. This all this information came from the dream of Pharaoh, which Joseph interpreted. So now his job was to do that managing of, hence why I'm saying he was the minister of agriculture, right? And then now, after all this has happened, after such a life, the same people who threw him into that pit and sold him into slavery all those years ago show up, and they don't even recognize him. And this is such a revelation even in itself. The fact that they don't see him, it proves that your response is the real, that's where the real power lies. Because what they do in response to your pain is very insignificant. Because if you look at his brothers who threw him into this pit and sold him into slavery, while he was suffering, they had forgotten about him basically. They had moved on. The boys were out. Nowhere does it say that they suffered in this time, or they were crying, or they had hard lives, you know. So if you are going to wait for an event of pain or suffering to happen in the people's lives of the people who hurt you, you're going to suffer. You're going to carry that burden, because for all you know, it might never happen. Their lives could go on, and you can't do that if you don't take responsibility. So yeah, man, it's a whole lot. It's a big thing. It's a big topic. But you know what? I suggest that you guys go read the book that like kind of inspired this whole episode, which is Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. And habit number one is being a proactive person, which is essentially being a responsible person, which is essentially not being a victim, which is essentially being like the Joseph in your life. Yeah, so I think I've said all that needs to be said. And for anyone who wants to read up on the story of Joseph for themselves, it is in Genesis 37 all the way to 50. Yeah. So that concludes today's episode. I hope you gained something from this, and please share it with someone who you think might find it useful. And yeah, to God be the glory.